Greetings, vinyl community. I'm going to talk today about my haul from the recent record show we had. We had the so-called Rock and Swap at the University of San Francisco this past weekend, and unsurprisingly, I came away with some very interesting records, including a couple items that were high on my want list. This being the first one by John Hassell and Brian Eno, Fourth World Volume 1 Possible Musics from 1980 on the Editions EG label, and comes in this interesting clear inner sleeve with Eno and Fripp and all their buddies printed on it. Editions EG label. The music here is very ambient, very floaty, very nocturnal, I think. You have the unique sound of John Hassell's trumpet, very breathy, very vocal-like, and a lot of interesting electronics from both Hassell and Eno, and some interesting collaborators, including the late Nana Vasconcelos, who is all over this with percussion and Brazilian instruments. Percy Jones plays bass on the first track. It's got Michael Brook on bass on a track. So that's the first one that I was super pleased to find. The second one was this 1971 release by the Third Ear Band in just beautiful condition. This was everything I could hope for, because I love the package. This cover may not be obvious. That's a Roger Dean artwork on the cover. And this is the music from the film of Macbeth by Roman Polanski. And the Third Ear Band, for the purposes of this recording, included Simon House on violin and synthesizer. Simon House would go on to play with Hawkwind, and also with David Bowie, and just sessions with a whole host of people. And Paul Buckmaster on cello and bass guitar. Paul Buckmaster, of course, being best known for his orchestral arrangements for people like David Bowie again, Elton John, the Rolling Stones, and a bunch of nobodies like that. Also in the band were Paul Minns on oboe and recorder, Glenn Sweeney on drums, and Denim Bridges on guitars. No credit for the vocal. There's one track with vocals. Otherwise, it's an all-instrumental album with an interesting mixture of folk, kind of early music, Renaissance music, and avant-garde chamber music feel. Really, really interesting album, and beautiful package, beautiful condition. I was just so pleased to find that one. I showed another album by Alain Renaud about a year ago, I think, and this was his first real solo album, I believe. That one that I showed was the second. This is simply called Renaud. It's produced by Renaud, the guitarist himself, and Richard Pignat, who is of Helden fame and is the owner of the label Urus Records. This is, I think somebody just stuck this paper sleeve to make it easier to deal with the original. This is what it would originally have been packaged in, the plastic. And the music is primarily instrumental. He does do some singing on here. It's all a one-man production. Combination of fusion, experimental guitar work, some prog rock, and some more mainstream rock moves. So it kind of journeys through a series of different moods and moves. But mainly you'd call it an experimental guitar recording, I think. And someone a bit more well-known, I think, to most of us around the rock and roll community, Sparks, and their second album, A Woofer in Tweeter's Clothing. Well, this one was on my want list, too. I think I overpaid for this one because I didn't think that it should have come with a lyric sheet, and I did not get a lyric sheet in this copy, but oh well. At least I've got the vinyl. Not in the greatest condition cover-wise, but not too bad. This is it's a fantastic album. The songs are great, very witty, very catchy. The vocal approach, I think that Russell Mael had not quite found his voice at this point. So he is singing in the high voice, but it kind of doesn't have the focus that he would display starting on the next album. This is one of the two albums that they recorded on the Bearsville label, starting out as Half Nelson. So this is the last one before they moved to Island and started that real classic run with Kimono My House, Propaganda, and Indiscreet. Still, it's just a marvelous album, so funny, and great power pop music. So from 1972, the second album by Sparks. The person who sold me the Third Ear Band also had this. It was marked $5, so he just threw that in for free. Terry Rypdal, brilliant Norwegian guitarist from 1980, and his album Descendre on the ECM label. And this is really not a million miles away from the first album I showed, the John Hassell and Brian Eno album, because it features trumpet and electronics, as well as Rypdal's own guitar, which itself has a very electronic approach. He does more washes of guitar. It's a funny title for this, Descendre, to descend, because the music, as I said, of the John Hassell and Brian Eno is mostly kind of floaty. There's a lot of just kind of Rypdal fading in all of his notes and playing long sustained notes on the guitar, just hovering around the music. It's a trio. It's Polly Mikkelborg on trumpet, flugelhorn, and keyboards, Rypdal himself on guitar, keyboards, and flute, and John Christensen on drums and percussion. And there they all are. As you can see, it's a gold-stamped promo. I really don't go for these on the ECM albums just because, I like the covers to be unblemished, but what the hey, I got it for free. It was marked $5. I could have paid a whole $5 for that. But no. So that was my haul from the Rockin' Swap, and after that, since I was in the neighborhood, I headed over to Amoeba Music on Haight Street and picked up The Gentle Giant, not by Gentle Giant, but by KUSF Latif. One of my favorite flute players in jazz. Of course, he's a multi-instrumentalist. He plays a lot of different things. He plays a lot of oboe on here. It's actually all broken down by song, so I can't easily see all the different instruments that he plays on here, but there's some really cool groove material on here with some fine tropical sounding flute, and probably the most the attention-getting piece on here is his cover of Hey Jude, which Latif plays on the oboe. It's marked, "Do not adjust the playback level on your audio equipment, readjust your mind." And what's happening there is we've got a 9-minute and 10-second version of Hey Jude, which begins at an almost inaudible volume level, and over the course of 9 minutes just gradually increases in volume to the normal listening level at the end, with the obviously multiple repetitions of the Na 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 Hey Jude theme. So it's kind of a stunt, but it's really a a different way. It is kind of a mind-adjusting way to hear music. It's definitely not an approach taken on very many records. So that was for the weekend. Then yesterday I stopped over at my local shop, Vinyl Solution, and found in the new arrivals bin Gato Barbieri and Dollar Brand, also known as Abdullah Ibrahim these days, hoping to go to see him at SF Jazz in the near future. Their album Confluence, this has been released under, I think, different titles on different labels. This is a 1975 release on Arista Freedom, but the recording is from 1968. I really, this has been around, I see this a lot, but I'd never picked it up and never heard it. So I kind of associated it with being a 70s release. So I was kind of expecting 70s Gato, but it's 60s Gato, and it's a lot darker and more experimental than I expected from the combination of these two musicians. Certainly Gato Barbieri started out as a more experimental saxophone player than he ended up, but Dollar Brand is known for his very propulsive and rhythmic sound, a lot of funky kind of ostinato rhythms. And there is some of that. There's that very African groove, Dollar Brand himself being South African, on the last track here. But otherwise, this is much darker and more experimental. It is just the two of them playing as a duo. It's recorded in Italy on March 16th, 1968. And it really is a terrific album. So very, very glad I finally picked a copy of this up. Why we get to see Gato only, I don't know. I guess Dollar Brand is shy. Finally, from the bargain bin. From 1962, the original Broadway cast LP of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. Now, the film version of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, which features Zero Mostel, who is also in this Broadway production, playing Pseudolus, the lead character. Also, Jack Gilford is in both this and the film version, playing Hysterium. That film is one of my favorites of all time. I think it's the funniest thing ever. Just the funniest movie I can think of. This is a gatefold production on Capitol from 1962. And it is obviously a musical, but the film version doesn't include about half of the songs that were originally written for the stage version. So I'd never heard those songs. And picking this up, I've finally heard for the first time all the songs that were missing from the film version, which is very cool. Again, there's good old Zero. Well, that's it. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoy the kind of music that I show and you haven't already, please do visit my Bandcamp page and check out the CDs and the vinyl albums that I have available. I think that my music would appeal to people who are interested in the more avant-garde side of what I show. So I'd love for you to check it out, give it a listen. And if you're so inclined, purchase an album or a CD. Thanks very much for watching. Be well. Talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.